What's up, everybody? Welcome in to Heartland College Sports. How are you? I'm Pete Mundo. We cover the Big 12 Conference. We are glad you are here joining us because even though the regular season is over, you know, and I know, there is still so much to talk about. Let us know where you're watching from tonight. If you are on YouTube, if you are on Facebook, thank you for being here. As always, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Same thing on the podcast. Drop that 5-star rating and review. We're over, 800 or so reviews and ratings on Apple. So keep those coming through. Thank you guys for being here as always. So tonight, I wanted to give you grades on the Big 12 football coaching decisions that have been made thus far. I'll give a grade like an A+, a C-, maybe a D, maybe an F. This will be new head coaches. This will be head coaches who were retained. We'll mix and match here. We've got a lot to get to, more than you'd think. It's not just about the two new head coaches who are coming in. All right, so let's do that, and let's get it rolling here on Heartland College Sports. I want to start, though, with the two new head coaches. Let's begin with Scott Frost at UCF. I'm going to give that hire a B-. I know that everybody loves the guy coming home. He killed it at the press conference. He basically said at the press conference, I didn't want to leave. But when you're tired, when you've got this big blue blood job like Nebraska dangling in front of you, it's obviously where you played. Oh, how do you say no? And it sounds good. It does. But remember, Scott Frost really has one good season as a college football coach. Now, it was a great season. It was that 13-0 season for UCF. But if you think about this guy's career as a head football coach, it is one good season. That's it. It doesn't mean I don't think he can win. It doesn't mean I don't think he'll be a improvement over Gus Malzahn. But I don't think he's going to recruit better than Gus Malzahn. I don't think he knows offense better than Gus Malzahn. Maybe he develops better than Gus Malzahn. That's entirely possible. But there's nothing to suggest that Scott Frost is going to do something magical that is going to dramatically turn this program around into a winner. Now, maybe he's had those conversations privately with those in Central Florida. I hope he has. I hope he has a great plan. But I'm going to give the thing a B-. I want it to work. The storyline is tremendous. He's back where he, had a lot of success. But at the same time, I think you have to take some cautious optimism here if you're a UCF fan and not just buy into a guy winning a press conference because you know him. And all the former players are jacked up. Everybody's excited. This is a can't-miss situation. Once that all subsides, then we're really going to find out, once we get to the fall and what the season looks like, whether or not this guy is truly the answer or if he is in over his head. So I'm giving Scott Frost's hire a B- for UCF. Similarly, we go to West Virginia, and they bring back one of their old head coaches. It is weird how this has worked out this year, isn't it? The two fired Big 12 coaches end up getting replaced by guys who were predecessors. You're going back 17 years at this point. But same thing with Rich Rodriguez. Yes, he was great at West Virginia. But, man, he was bad at Michigan, and he was bad at Arizona. And then he bounced around for a bunch of years. There were scandals at Arizona, the whole thing. And then he shows up at Jacksonville State, and he wins. And he helps them move from the FCS to the FBS, and that's great. But it's still Jacksonville State. Okay, it is a different environment than even the last time Rich Rodriguez was on the sidelines at a Power 4 school, which at this point is going on a decade ago. Rich Rod was last a Power 4 head coach in 2017. He will be on the sidelines starting again at West Virginia for the 2025 season. That's basically a decade. Let's do the math together, right? Basically been a decade for the guy. since he was roaming the sidelines of a Power 4 school as a head coach. This sport has moved a lot in the last 8 years. I'm not saying he can't do it, but I am giving this hire a C-. I've just got to see it to believe it. I understand there are members of the donor class who are in love with this, but can we not forget how this guy left, right? Can you not forget the end of the 2007 season if you're a West Virginia fan? You literally think you're going to be playing for a natty. You lose to Pitt, and then this guy goes to Michigan. This guy. I mean, this was your hometown hero. He had turned down Alabama the previous season. Rich Rod was going to be there for the long haul. He played there. He was an alum. The whole thing, it was perfect. You were set up for decades to come. And then right after missing a chance to play for a national championship, what happens? He bails on you. I mean, that is a brutal way to end that tenure. And I know that time heals a lot of wounds. Hell, if Rich Rod can get back with West Virginia, then you can get back with the ex-wife that you can't stand. Truly, anything is possible. And I know a lot of people watching right now, if you're a Big 12 fan, you're not totally familiar with how that went down with Rich Rod back in 2007. But just know, and West Virginia fans can confirm, it was ugly. Absolutely hideous. And 17 years later, he's back. And it makes for a great story. He will kill it at the press conference. But is it actually going to work? First off, the Mountaineers have to jack it up on the NIL side. Neil Brown referenced that in a recent interview he did. And it wasn't to take a shot at West Virginia. It was just a reality. I don't care if you're Rich Rod or Neil Brown. You got to have the dough to compete. And while there's no doubt when it comes to coaching, Rich Rod knows what he's doing, this job's a lot more than that. It's being a CEO. It's figuring out the portal. It's figuring out NIL. There's a lot that goes into it now. And I am going to be fascinated by how he puts this together. I liked an Andy Koltelnicki guy who came, of course, would have come from Penn State. He's their OC, coached for years under Lance Leipold, really helped turn around KU football. Up-and-comer, early 40s, around the game at a major level, understands what it takes to do this at a big-time level, spending this season at Penn State. He's going to get a big job somewhere at some point. I thought he would have been a great fit at West Virginia. I don't know if they didn't want him or he didn't want them. I'm sure they didn't want him. But because if he didn't want them, that would surprise me. Unless he didn't think he could win there at a high level. Unless he didn't feel like the program was committed like it needed to be. But West Virginia is a place you can win big. It is a top 25 all-time college football program. But in this era, obviously money talks. And you got to have the dough. Got to have the dough to make sure it happens. Pete Mundo with you on HeartlandCollegeSports.com. Thank you guys, as always, for joining us as a part of the show. So I'm giving Scott Frost a B-. I'm giving Rich Rod a C-. Let's go to some of the other coaching decisions that came down. I've got one A+ on the board here. My A+ is for the contract extension for Matt Campbell. It was a no-brainer. There were always dumb rumors out there about Matt Campbell. There always are. Someone saying he's going to North Carolina. Not saying, but, he was always on this North Carolina shortlist, which never made any sense. Matt Campbell at Michigan State, when that was open last year, I didn't think he'd do it, but at least that makes sense. Midwest guy, right? But come on. He was never going to go to North Carolina. He gets a new deal through 2032. Matt Campbell is Iowa State football. He can be there for his entire life if he wants and his full career. He can be Bill Snyder at Iowa State. He can get the college football playoffs in this new era. He can win Big 12 championships. He can do all those things there with his system and with his style and format. He's never going to be the guy who's leading everybody in NIL. They had the fewest players or the second fewest players in and out of the portal last offseason. They're always going to be down near the bottom of Big 12 rankings when it comes to player movement. That's what Matt Campbell wants. He's a program builder with his guys. Now, he can't get stuck in the, Stone Ages, but I don't believe he will. But he also knows the backbone of this program is going to be done the old school way. Recruit guys who want to be here. Yes, we'll sprinkle some NIL money on them, a little bit of, cheese to keep them happy. We know that's part of the deal right now, but we're not going to start buying guys for one-year contracts in the offseason. That's not what Matt Campbell's about. And he got him to a Big 12 title game, second time in the last 5 seasons. They lost, unfortunately, for them. But you know what? He can be here as long as he wants, and I hope that he stays here for his entire career. It will be good for Iowa State and good for the Big 12. Matt Campbell's extension gets an A+. Kalani Sitake. Kalani Sitake, I am giving an A- to on his big contract extension as well. Listen, he's obviously a great fit for on-field and off-field reasons at BYU. He's a Cougar. We know his personal history. We know what this guy's all about. He's tremendous. But if you're a BYU fan, you'll remember a lot of this past offseason, what was being talked about. Can Kalani Sitake be the guy that wins in the Big 12? Now, he proved that he can, right? They won 10 games this year. He deserved a contract extension. But if you really, and I know we don't want to play the what-if games or the buts and all that stuff. I'm just going to point this out, okay? You look at how some of their games went. You look at the Oklahoma State game. You look at the Utah game. The Baylor game that they almost blew. I'm just going to sit here and say that they are a few plays away from being 7-5. You can find other games if you want as well. Now they're 10-2. But I'm just going to ask BYU fans, if the ball bounced the other way in a couple of those late game plays, how would you be feeling about Kalani Sitake? I think you'd feel fine at 7-5 this year. You'd say, well, 5-7 last year, 7-5 this year. We are trending in the right direction, right? That's how I would feel if I was you. But I also understand that, you can come crashing back down the earth very quickly. I'm not saying they're going to crash back down the earth by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying, do I think BYU is a year in, year out 10-win team in the Big 12? I don't. There are inherent challenges. We all know about it. The LDS style and obviously brand within the university impacts the football program. Is that a way to win big every year in major Power 4 football in 2025? I'm not convinced that it is. I'm not saying BYU should change at all. I'm just saying you got to be realistic. So it's a great job. I mean, he's done a great job. I'm going to give that an A- on that extension, though. The Mike Gundy retention, I'm giving that a C. Now, I would have brought back Mike Gundy. I just wouldn't have done everything that Oklahoma State did to bring back Mike Gundy. The way it played out so publicly, the way that you had the media at every turn basically wondering whether or not Mike Gundy was going to meet a deadline, and if not, he was going to get fired with cause, which I don't know what cause they had to fire him, but that whole thing was such a mess. I just wonder how much damage has been done over the short term and the long term to that relationship between the university and Mike Gundy. I don't have the answer. Nobody really knows outside of, AD Chad Weiberg and Dr. Schrum, the president, and Mike Gundy himself. But Gundy ends up taking a pay cut. That money will be reinvested into NIL. The buyout is going to be smaller than it was. I would have just said to Mike Gundy privately, I know you went 0-9. Fire the coordinators. Bring in your guys. But if next year is bad, then we're going to have a problem. Now, maybe this whole renegotiation was basically set up so that if they have to get rid of Mike Gundy next year, they can fire him easily at a lower cost. Maybe that's what Oklahoma State was thinking. But in which case, are you going to get the best from Mike Gundy? It feels like there's a power play going on here. With now Mike Gundy not having to deal with the Mike Holders of the world, the former AD, who, if you're not an Oklahoma State fan, he couldn't stand. With obviously T. Boone Pickens not being around anymore, it feels like there's a power struggle happening in some respects when it comes to who's in charge in Stillwater. And Mike Gundy's at that point where he kind of feels like he's untouchable. And I think there were people there who wanted to say, you are touchable, and here's how you're touchable. And I don't know if that works for a guy like Mike Gundy. I don't know if that motivates a guy like Mike Gundy. I don't think it does. And I don't think long-term it's good for the relationship. But I get why everybody did what they did. I just don't know if it's going to play out well for the program. So with the way that went down with Mike Gundy, I'm going to give that a C, because he either gets a big kick in the butt and starts kicking butt again, or he's mailing it in. Next year's a disaster, and then you're going to have to figure out what to do. I don't know if it's going to work out. I'm giving that deal a C. All right, next up, we've got Kyle Whittingham. He announced he's coming back for 2025. There was some speculation that Whittingham may end up retiring. That obviously is not going to happen. B+, largely because I think Kyle Whittingham knows what to do. I think he's a damn good head coach. And unlike Oklahoma State, Kyle Whittingham has been bit in the butt by a quarterback that he can't kick. He just can't kick the guy. It's like a bad drug, a bad addiction. And that, of course, well, do I want to say his name? He's only been around college football for how long now? Like 12 years, Cam Rising. Now, they did get a big transfer from New Mexico, so that's a good thing for the folks in Salt Lake City. But you get the point. This is a different beast than what Mike Gundy dealt with at Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy was getting blown out 6 ways from Sunday. It felt like every single week. 52-0 to Colorado is just an absolute utter joke. Utah didn't look like they quit on their head coach, even over that 7-game losing streak, right? I didn't think so, at least. And they lost a lot of close games. 1-score games to Arizona State, TCU. Houston was a field goal. BYU was a point. Iowa State was 3 points. They almost won that game. So, that's 4 or 5 games right there during that losing streak that was a 1-score game. That's not what happened to Mike Gundy. And that's while going down to his 5th-string quarterback at one point, it felt like. They were a total mess. They dealt with a lot at Utah. So Whittingham is not a guy who's over the hill. The game has not passed him by. He's not one of these, rigid, I don't do NIL stuff. That's not what's going on here. If he's got the energy, and damn, you know what? Few guys are going to look better than Kyle Whittingham does at his age, and come off better than Kyle Whittingham does at his age. So I think he's got all that going for him in his mid-60s. He's probably got a couple of years left. We know that they've got the head coach in waiting there. So I'm happy to bring Kyle Whittingham back. I don't think he wants to go out like he did this past season. I don't think he should go out like this past season went. He's a better program builder, better coach, and fields a way better team than what we saw this past season in Salt Lake City. So that deal is a B+. Then we've got Arizona welcoming back Brent Brennan. And this I am giving a big, fat D. I don't understand it. Brent Brennan was awful. Brent Brennan was handed the keys to a Maserati, and he turned it into a Pinto. We knew the offensive line was going to have issues, but you know what? You can coach around it when it comes to how you set up your offense, your play calling, knowing you got to outscore teams to win, and Arizona did anything but that in one of the worst seasons I've seen for a first-year head coach who's got a first-round, possibly top 10 pick at wide receiver and potentially a top 2-rounder at quarterback. I know football's 9 other guys on the field, but come on, you had all the talent that a first-year head coach could want on a team that had won double digits last year. You had good talent on both sides of the ball. I mean, one of the best cornerbacks. Once again, I know that the trenches were a mess, but damn, there was high-end talent on this team. And Brent Brennan just totally butchered the whole thing. It was awful. In this day and age of college football, I think you know quickly what you have. What do they say in life? Hire slow, fire fast. When you know it doesn't work and it's not going to work, you move on. Now, it's easy to say when you're talking about a $50,000 or $100,000 employee compared to a multi-million-dollar head football coach with a buyout of $10 million. I get that. It's easy for me to say it's not my money, but there's nothing to suggest that Brent Brennan is going to turn this thing around. Brent Brennan and Scott Satterfield feel like two guys at Arizona and Cincinnati, respectively, who are just going to be there probably near the bottom most seasons. Maybe they pop to 7 wins once in a blue moon. The fan base will get tricked into thinking the year after that's going to be their year, and then they fall back to 4-8 or 5-7, and around and around and around we go. Neither of those guys are going to get those programs to the promised land. It's not going to happen. Arizona's not going to find a better quarterback, wide receiver, cornerback than they had this year. They can get better in the trenches only because they can't get worse. But my gosh, this team lost some embarrassing games this year. Kansas State on the road sticks out to me. The game at BYU was bad. The Colorado game was horrific. I mean, UCF may have been the worst game I saw anybody play this year. When they got crushed like 56-12 to UCF, that may have been the worst I saw any Big 12 team play this season, outside of possibly Oklahoma State losing to Colorado on Black Friday. Those were hideous. The loss at TCU was terrible. And then the Arizona State loss, 49-7. I mean, they may have two of the worst losses I watched all season. Arizona State loss and UCF loss. Horrific performances for Arizona. So, of course, I would love to see them turn it around because I think they're a sleeping giant, just like I said Arizona State was a sleeping giant in the Big 12. But what's got to tweak them even more in Tucson is that Kenny Dillingham is at his alma mater, has this team in a college football playoff. The sky's the limit. The fan base is fired up. He's lit. Everybody's loving him. He's the toast of the state. He's the toast of the conference. He's the toast of college football in large part. And Arizona's down there in Tucson with a guy they can't get rid of because the buyout's too high. And then the president at Arizona says, Brent deserves more time. No, he doesn't. With all due respect, no, he doesn't. And I don't like calling for guys' firings, but I will just sit here and tell you whether or not I think it's going to work. And you can disagree with me. That's what makes the world go round. I respect the heck out of every one of your opinions. However you want to share them on social media, YouTube, on our forums as well. But man, I don't see this one working out at all. And when I don't see it working out, I'm not going to say, well, let's wait this one through. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'd love to be proven wrong. I just don't think in this case I will be. I'm Pete Mundo. It's great to have you guys here on Heartland College Sports. Thanks for joining us. If you want to pop in a couple of questions, I'd be happy to take those right now on Facebook, on YouTube, on X. Just drop us a comment. I will try to wrap up the show with some of your questions as well here. I should have mentioned that earlier so I could roll through them right now. But just drop a comment in. What do you guys want to know as we get set for the bowl games? Next week, the West Virginia Frisco Bowl is the first bowl game for the Big 12, and then we'll have a few days off. So there'll be a little bit of time before we get back to more bowl games. The old Frisco Bowl, hey, listen, this Saturday is going to be weird without college football. I'm going to hate it. I actually got invited to the KU-NC State game this weekend, so I will be in Allen Fieldhouse for that game on Saturday afternoon. We're going to be getting into the basketball. Trust me, we'll do plenty of hoops as the weeks move along and we get into January and conference play. So I will get into all that here at Heartland College Sports. That's why you want to be subscribed to the channel. So I'll be at Allen Fieldhouse. That'll kind of, I guess, lessen the sting of not having a full Saturday of college football. I think I'll make it. Allen Fieldhouse is a bucket list that you guys have got to check out at some point. All right. Let's see. What do we got here? Tucson does have some great Mexican food. Great. Thanks. I don't need to go 1,000 miles for Mexican food. I've got some good Mexican food 1,000 feet away from me down the street. I'm sure it's good, But that ain't getting me to Tucson, brother. It ain't. Pete, imagine what Utah would have done with Noah Fafita. Oh, no, yeah. You kidding me? Utah with Fafita would have totally turned around their season. Mike says Brent Brennan would have has set the program back 5 years or more. I agree. I've got some buddies who are Tucson or Arizona alum. They completely agree. They are totally done with Brent Brennan. Pete, I'm a cat. You're so right. This is from Greg. We need him gone yesterday, referring to Brent Brennan. Absolutely. No doubt about it. BYU, writes Mike, could have easily been 6-6 or 7-5. Yes, I agree. Mike writes, best coaching move was Iowa State keeping Matt Campbell to the new 8-year extension. Go Clones, great channel. Keep up the great work, sir. You can drop the sir. All right. Call me plenty of things. No need to add the sir, but thank you very much for that, Mike. I appreciate it. Yes, that's why Matt Campbell was the only A+ on my list when I gave these grades on these Big 12 moves thus far. All right. Nathan says West Virginia UCF for the Big 12 title in 2026, not 2025, 2026. Nathan, look at what just happened in the Big 12. The standings were upside down. How can you possibly predict, forget 2025, how can you possibly predict 2026 in this sport, my brother? Half the team turns over every year. How do you even come to that? I mean, I love a bold pick. I'm all about big-time predictions. That's part of what we do here. But I don't know how you could possibly predict this sport 2 years out. It's not like the old days where it's like, hey, they got a freshman class that's lit. By the time they're juniors, oh, man, place is going to be bumping. That's not how the sport is anymore, man. I wish it were, but it's not. Oh, my gosh. Okay, I will leave you with this. I saw this before I hopped on the show. Bill Belichick's buyout at UNC goes from $10 million down to $1 million this June. You heard that right. Bill Belichick's buyout, per multiple reports, drops from $10 million to $1 million. Not next year, this summer. Meaning, if he gets an NFL job this summer that he wants, he's gone. He will not coach a single game with the Tar Heels, and his son will be the head coach. It always felt like it was about getting his son a gig. And listen, I guess we're all dads. I've got 3 girls, so I won't know what that's like when it comes to getting them a football job. But you get the point, right? Bill Belichick may never coach a game with the Tar Heels based on that little tidbit. It might work out. He might turn him into a power. But as I give grades today for the Big 12 coaching moves, I would give that one a C+ at best. I'm Pete Mundo. Thank you, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Makes the world a difference. Same thing on the podcast. Hit that 5-star rating and review on Apple and on Spotify. Thank you, guys, for being a part of the show. We so appreciate you. A lot more content's going to be coming your way here with bowl season right around the corner at heartlandcollegesports.com. Talk to you soon.